I think it's important to clarify that I didn't start any of this because I thought it was an easy way to build an empire or make money. In fact, if you look at the statistics back in 2002 and 2003, the probability of both a private rocket company and a mass market electric car company succeeding was less than 1%. If your goal is just to make money, choosing aerospace engineering and automotive manufacturing is probably the stupidest thing you can do. My mind doesn't operate on the logic of what is likely to succeed. It operates on the logic of what is absolutely necessary for the future of humanity to be exciting and inspiring. To understand how you tackle a massive goal, you have to break down how you look at reality. Most people live their lives by analogy. They copy what other people are doing with slight variations. They look at a problem and say, well, nobody has ever done it that way before, so it must be impossible. Or everyone else is doing it this way, so this must be the correct way. That is a very lazy way to think. If you want to achieve goals that have never been achieved before, you have to discard analogy completely and adopt what physicists call first principles thinking. First principles means you boil a problem down to its most fundamental truths. The things you know are absolutely undeniable, and you reason up from there. Let me give you a very real example from the early days of SpaceX. When I first decided that we needed to send a greenhouse to Mars to inspire the public about space exploration, I went to buy a rocket. I traveled to Russia because traditional aerospace companies in the West were charging $90 million for a single launch. The Russians weren't any better. They treated me like an amateur and wanted to charge me nearly the same amount for old, refurbished missiles. On the flight back from Moscow, I sat there with a calculator and started looking at the raw physics of a rocket. What is a rocket made of? Aerospace-grade aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber, copper, and rocket propellant. Then I asked myself, what is the actual material cost of those elements on the commodities market? When I ran the numbers, I discovered something shocking. The raw materials required to build a rocket only accounted for about 2% of the typical sale price of a rocket. That was the eureka moment. The problem wasn't that rockets were inherently expensive to build. The problem was that the traditional aerospace industry was incredibly inefficient, relying on layers of subcontractors who all added massive markups. First principles told me that if we could build a company that manufactured its own parts vertically, under one roof, we could reduce the cost of spaceflight by a factor of 10 or maybe even 100. That is how you approach a massive goal. You don't look at the size of the mountain, you look at the atomic structure of the rocks that make the mountain. The year 2008 was, without a doubt, the darkest period of my life. The pressure was so intense that it felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest every time I opened my eyes in the morning. I was working 120 hours a week. My first marriage was falling apart. I was literally borrowing money from friends just to pay the rent on the house I was living in and to keep the employees at Tesla and SpaceX paid for just one more week. People look at me now and see the success, but they don't understand that I felt like an absolute piece of trash back then. Every single day was a battle against total annihilation. We had enough money left for exactly one more launch of the Falcon 1 rocket. If that fourth launch failed, SpaceX was dead. And because I had split my remaining funds between both companies, Tesla would have died too. It was an agonizing choice because if I had given all the money to SpaceX, it would have had a higher chance of survival, but Tesla would have definitely died. If I gave it all to Tesla, SpaceX would have died. It felt like having two children and being told you can only afford to feed one of them, so you have to choose which one survives. I couldn't do that. I decided to split the money evenly, risking total, absolute bankruptcy for both. What keeps you going in a moment like that isn't some magical self-confidence. It's an obsessive devotion to the mission. I care deeply about the future of humanity. I genuinely believe that if we do not become a multiplanetary species, if we remain confined to a single planet, some extinction event will eventually wipe out human consciousness. Whether it's an asteroid, a supervolcano, a nuclear war, or an engineered pandemic, a single planet species is fundamentally fragile. I couldn't live with myself if I let the spark of human consciousness die out just because I wanted to protect my personal comfort or my financial reputation. You have to accept the pain. If you want to do extraordinary things, you have to have an incredibly high pain tolerance. I often say that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. You have to be prepared for everything to go wrong, for everyone to tell you that you are a fool, and for your own body to scream at you to stop. But if the mission matters enough, you simply don't care about the pain. You keep walking through the fire until you either burn up completely or reach the other side. On September 28, 2008, that fourth rocket reached orbit. If it had failed, we wouldn't be sitting here today. The difference between a madman and a genius is simply the outcome of the final attempt. I am naturally an optimistic person, so my internal timelines are usually based on everything going perfectly according to plan. Of course, in the real world of engineering, nothing ever goes perfectly according to plan. So yes, my timelines are often wrong, and they are almost always late by conventional standards. But here is the secret. If you set an aggressive, seemingly impossible timeline and you miss it, you still achieve far more than if you had set a safe, conservative timeline. If I tell a team they have 2 years to design a new valve for a rocket, they will take 2 years because human nature expands the work to fill the time allotted to it. But if I tell them they have 2 weeks, they are forced to strip away all the bureaucratic nonsense, all the unnecessary meetings, and focus entirely on the core engineering problem. They might not finish it in 2 weeks. It might take them 2 months. But 2 months is still drastically faster than 2 years. I don't push people because I am cruel. I push people because we are running out of time. Life is short, and civilizational progress is not guaranteed. If you look at history, civilizations don't just automatically move forward, they rise and they fall. The Egyptians built the pyramids, but eventually, the knowledge of how to build pyramids was completely lost. The Romans built incredible aqueducts and roads, but then the Roman Empire collapsed, and Europe entered the Dark Ages, forgetting how to make indoor plumbing for 1,000 years. We cannot assume that because we have advanced technology today, we will automatically have it tomorrow. We have a narrow window of opportunity right now, a window where the global economy is stable enough and technology is advanced enough to secure the future of humanity on Mars. We cannot waste a single day, and I don't ask my teams to do anything that I am not doing myself. During the production hell of the Tesla Model 3, when the entire factory automated system failed, I didn't stay in some corporate office in Silicon Valley. I lived on the factory floor in Fremont. I slept on the floor under my desk. I didn't shower for days, and I worked 3 shifts in a row alongside the assembly line workers. If my team is suffering, I must suffer more. That is the only true way to lead. You have to be at the front of the battle, taking the hardest hits yourself. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the light of human consciousness is preserved and extended into the stars. If 50 years from now, we have a self-sustaining city on Mars with 1 million people living there, a city that could survive even if Earth were to completely go dark, then I would consider my life a profound success. I want to look out into the night sky and know that we are out there among the stars, exploring the universe, understanding the nature of reality, and pushing the boundaries of what is possible. But to get there, we have to survive the challenges we are creating here on Earth, particularly with artificial intelligence. AI is the most disruptive technology humanity has ever created, and if we are not careful, it could easily outpace our ability to control it. That's why my goals aren't just about escaping Earth. They are about preparing humanity for the future. Whether it is transitioning Earth to sustainable energy through Tesla, connecting our brains to bandwidth through Neuralink to keep pace with AI, or building the rockets to reach Mars, it is all part of a single, interconnected goal, maximizing the probability that human consciousness survives into the distant future. The grand lesson I have learned throughout this entire journey is that you cannot let fear dictate your goals. Fear is a relic of our evolutionary past designed to keep us safe from predators. But in the modern world, fear mostly serves to keep us mediocre. If you base your life choices on avoiding failure, you will never try anything truly grand. You have to accept that failure is a highly probable outcome of any worthwhile endeavor, and you have to be okay with that. You have to love the goal so much that the prospect of failure doesn't terrify you anymore. You just have to build, fight, sacrifice, and keep moving forward, no matter how hard the universe hits you. That is how you change the world.